And welcome back to the Really Hill podcast. Today we have a fantastic guest with us today. His name is Keith Howell. So Keith is the owner of Unique Flooring here in Dublin, but alongside that he's also the man behind Howell Mindset and Howell Wellness based out in Clondalkin. I've heard some great reviews about it. Now on paper that sounds like business mindset and wellness, all of the usual words that people would throw around. But what we're actually getting into today is the story behind all of that, because Keith hasn't just built business, he's rebuilt himself. He's gone through his own life battles with different controlling issues, and the kind that don't just affect your day, they affect your direction, your decisions, and how you see yourself. And what I suppose respect about Keith is that he didn't come through it quietly. He turned it into something, and so through his own life experiences he's now turned that around to be able to reach out and offer that help to others, which is a massive step, and something I strongly admire, I suppose. There's nothing as powerful as that lived experience to be able to reach out and help somebody else. So, Keith, let's go back a little bit, and I suppose before the business and before the wellness centre, tell us a little bit about Keith.
Yeah, so I suppose I'll go back to the start. As I said to you before, when we agreed to do the podcast, I'm in the process of writing the book at the moment, coming close to the end of it. And I went back as young as 7 in the book, because for me, it was sort of, when I've done the work on myself, it was sort of the turning point. So a 7-year-old Keith lived in Inchicore, was really living life as a really innocent kid. I remember at that age, we moved up to Clondalkin, and moving to it, which was nearly like the country at the time when we moved up. As you can see, I'm sallow skinned. Back in the 80s, early 80s, there wouldn't have been sort of many mixed races in Ireland. Not that, and I'm not mixed race. I'm mother and father and both from Dublin. Just have good skin. And I would have suffered an awful lot of sort of racial abuse in the school in Clondalkin, of people calling me the N-word and calling me this, that and the other. And as a kid, it has an effect on you. To the extent that my mother, at the age of 8, my mother walked into the bathroom and caught me trying to wash myself with household bleach. Now, that could have had a fucking terrifying effect if I would have followed through with it. And then fast forward then on a couple of years later, I started a little summer job with a local guy doing bread and cakes and stuff like that. And that man sexually abused me at the age of 9 and 10. And that was twice that happened. Now, I didn't think too much of all that at the time. I was a kid, had nothing to nobody, just dealt with it and felt I dealt with it.
Yeah.
At the age of, I think I was around 14, my brother was a DJ in sort of clubs around town, my older brother. And I started going to raves with him and to this club So and the Asylum and places like this. And that's where I first sort of tried an ecstasy tablet. And I remember just taking me to a different level and saying all these things that people used to slag me about, this stuff that happened to me working with this other guy, that all removed. I felt that I fitted in with certain groups. And I felt I'd arrived. I'm fucking here now. I feel good. I don't feel any of that negativity anymore. And I'd done that for, a couple of months. But then the innocent kid in me then, I fearful. I was hearing all these things about people dropping and stuff like that. And I stopped doing it. And it was horrible. A horrible feeling that I had. I decided to stop. And I said, you know what? I said, I can't do this because this could take my life, taking these tablets. And I ended up going back off, not doing anything for, I'd say, touching on probably 4 or 5 years. And when I was 19, it started sort of going out again. And I tried cocaine. It was the first time I tried cocaine. And again, it took me to a different place. And all this stuff started creeping back up again about the sexual abuse. And I'd always felt that I didn't fit into certain groups. I couldn't talk to people. And then when I was doing cocaine, all of a sudden, I felt I was sociable again. And like most cocaine users that I know from now, or that I've met over the years of doing what I do now, I think we all understand that we don't like the way we feel. All of a sudden take a substance or take something, and all of a sudden we do like the way we feel and we continue to do it. And it was just a weekend thing at the time. Again, felt I had control over it. I'd go out the weekend, have a few pints, I'd get a bag of cocaine, go on a session and come home, and things were good. But that all changed then. It started, I suppose, it's hard to explain it, the turning point for me, because My daughter got cancer at 17. Looking back on it now, what I should have been doing, I wasn't doing. I sort of made her illness all about me. It was poor me on the PT pot, on the PT train, go off and get more drugs and do more drugs and get more out of it. And I was actually using the illness at some stages to score free fucking drugs. Poor me, she's not well, this, that, the other, and people handed me stuff and all that. And it was just, and I think that was really the point of there was no return, and that was going back 14 years ago now. So that was when things really got bad. So it was probably 35, 36.
And so you had a couple of kids, obviously, and you were, functioning to some degree in that, you obviously had a job maybe, or, you had some sort of a family life,
Yeah.
but all the other stuff in the background, the escape was still there.
Yeah, I was in business. I got things very, very early. I think I succeeded too early in one part. In my early 20s, I got this amazing opportunity with this guy. He offered me a percentage of his business. I'm a carpenter by trade. He offered me partnership in his business in order for me to stay with
Yeah,
him. And it was a great opportunity. I was earning serious money. For the age I was in my early 20s, mid
yeah,
20s. But I was fucking putting all up my notes. I was going around like Jack the Lad. I was everybody's friend. I was fucking buying the drinks. I was fucking buying the coke. It was like fucking, like something on Wall Street nearly. The Wolf of Wall Street, the way I was going around in my early 20s, fucking driving flash cars, snorting cocaine, all this type of stuff. And again, it was another turning point in my
yeah.
life. That man got rid of me out of his business after a number of years. And I blamed him for everything that went wrong in my life. I made fucking everything. I went around talking about the man as if he was some sort of a devil or something, of the things that he wronged me. He done this and he done that. And it was only when I got clean, and still, I was only talking about it the other day. I've reached out to him a couple of times now. Now he's obviously not
Yeah.
ready, trying to make amends to him, because it's now I realise that, like, if I was me or if I was him back then, I would have wanted me out of business too. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of stories through the past that I suppose I'm not proud of, but I've went back and I've addressed most of them, to the best of my ability, because that's all I'm about now, is doing the next right thing. Some people, as you know, some people are not ready when you go to make amends for amends, and that's okay. I've reached out to that man, I think, 3 years in the last couple of years, or 3 times in the last couple of years. But that's okay. And if he never wants to meet me again, that's okay
Yeah.
too. I've made my peace with it. I've made, again, going back to, in order to come through addiction and come through all the stuff that I've came through, I've had to deal with a lot of demons. And one of them being, and a lot of people think I'm off the rocker when I say this, is that I had to forgive the man that sexually abused me.
Yes.
And it was in forgiving him that I got the
Yeah.
release and that sort of freedom that I
That's a
needed.
great thing, Keith. I just want to touch on that for a second, because I think it's really, really important. And that's a valuable lesson I learned a good few years ago about being able to forgive what you might perceive as the people that hurt you in such a way that are unforgivable. And what I learned for myself was that the forgiveness wasn't to let them away with anything. It wasn't to, let them off the hook, if that's what you want to say. But it was for my own peace. It was so I could put it down and let it go and be able to move on myself. And for me, depending on the case, sometimes it was making that forgiveness on a daily basis, and again and again and again until it sat with me. And sometimes it was a one-off thing where, yeah, look, I need to let that go and forgive them and move on. Um, but certainly for my own, journey and my own recovery, hugely important piece for me was that forgiveness piece.
Yeah, it's massive. Like, and as you said, like, it's forgiveness for you. You forgive them for you, not for them. And again, I know it's a cliche thing, and a lot of people talk about it. If I hand you a piece of hot coal, what would you do with it? You would throw it away. And a lot of us carry these things around that are born on us, eating us up inside, but we keep carrying them and carrying them and carrying them. And it's until we let them go that the release happens. And I remember early recovery, like I suppose the turning point for me was just before my 40th birthday. My wife, she'd had enough. And she'd said to me, like, listen, I'm done with this. I don't think we can keep going, this time and time over again. And that's when I sort of admitted to her how bad things had got. I said, listen, you don't understand how bad this is. I'm almost 7 days a week now. I can't go to work unless I have a bag of cocaine in my pocket. And I'll never forget it. She threw her arms around me and she says to me, we'll get you the help you need. even I was reading over that when I was doing the edits on the book that last week, and it brought me to tears,
Mm.
even thinking of how strong of a woman that she
Yeah.
was, and how I had someone that had that much love for me to still put her arms around me and tell me, listen, we'll get the help. And I didn't see her for years. I just kept hurting her and
It's
hurting her.
again, it's a huge piece. I listened to a lady, random coincidence, a girl I went to school with and hadn't seen her for many, many years. And I was at an event, a mental health event, about 6 months ago. And she got up, she's a member of Al-Anon. So kind of the family support piece around AA and CA and NA and things like that. And she told her version of the story as being the partner and what she put up with. And it's not that I'd never even thought about it. She put a whole new perspective on it for me. And it was such a powerful story. And, you know, she wasn't always innocent herself, and she was very open and honest. And it was a really powerful thing, but it really opened my eyes to the people that are there in the background that do support, that don't give up and continue to encourage. And even that piece you said there about your partner saying to you, no matter what, we'll get you the help. Huge, huge piece,
Or 100%, because like I didn't, and again, it's only when you come through the other sides that you sort of start looking at things that were, like, I remember a photograph popped up to me, and I'm going to actually use it as part of the cover of the book. It's a photograph of me 10 years ago, and I look 10 years older than I am today. And it's 10 years ago, and it's just frightening. I remember showing my wife the photograph, and I said, why the fuck didn't you tell me that it was that bad? And she says to me, I did. You just weren't listening. Like, I was sick of telling you. And again, I was just on that self-destruct that I didn't know how. And as a business owner, because Unique Flooring, you mentioned at the start, Unique Flooring is going quite a long time. It's going 16
Right.
years. But I'm only clean 7 years.
Okay.
Right. So it's been going, I was trying to run Unique Flooring while I was under the influence. I suppose in the last 7 years, Unique Flooring has become a business. It used to be me just going around fitting floors. Again, trying to be this big businessman, this big entrepreneur, but the head was messed up. And I led myself into the belief that I could only do paperwork when I was snorting cocaine.
Yeah. Okay.
And all these things that, like, Friday night, I used to lash into paperwork because I'd have a big bag of coke, and I'd be in and out to the toilet and doing paperwork. I thought I was, again, the Wolf of Wall Street. But the last 7 years has taught me that I now know I'm a business owner. I've now built a good size, substantial size business. And it's given me the ability then to come and do this with the centre. And my whole passion now in life is to go and just help as many people as possible.
Tell me, sorry for jumping in there, tell me a little bit about the turning point, and what did that look like initially, and what were kind of the first steps? What did the first year or two, especially that first year or so, what did that look like in terms of, turning things?
So we'll go back to sort of, and I know, and again, as you know, honesty is a big part of where we go in, especially when you're recovered from addiction or anything like that. And I'd identify myself as a recovered cocaine addict. I don't claim to be in recovery. I'm recovered. And that's just my way of talking, because I believe that the words that we use to ourselves are so important. So go back 10 years ago when my wife had said to me, listen, I think it's either you change or we're going to have to go our separate ways, wherever it may be. I didn't know where to go. I looked at myself even back then as a big business owner. So I was saying to myself, I can't go into local meets, and what if customers see me, or what if this person see me? And it was all, the head was doing a number on me. And a cousin of mine, Stephen, had worked in addiction services. You know, Stephen, had worked in addiction services for a long time. And although we weren't that close, I reached out to Stephen and I said, Stephen, I need your help. And went down, used to pop down to Stephen's house once a week. And was I listening? Truly, probably not. I was hearing them, but I wasn't truly listening. But there was a lot of things that he'd said to me that sort of never went away. And still today, I use them myself when someone comes to me. And I remember when I went down to him and I said to him, Stephen, I need it. He says to me, what's the problem? And I said, well, problem with cocaine. I said, I need to get away from it. It's destroying my life. And he says, okay. And as we went, conversations were going on. And he says to me, what about the drink? And I said, to be honest with you, Stephen, I don't have a problem with drink. And he looked at me and he says, that's good. He says, well, you don't have a problem with drink. You won't have a problem not drinking. And I was real cheeky fucker. But it was simple stuff like this. But again, did I succeed? No. when we came to, he brought me through the 12 steps. And when we got to step 4, there was things I left out. I thought, Stephen being my cousin, there was things I couldn't say to him and I couldn't. And I did leave things out and inevitably it brought me back
Yeah.
using. Then I felt that I was at to let Stephen down and I couldn't go back to him. And I remember going to another guy, won't mention his name, but I went to another guy and he used to call to my house and I'd pay him every week. And when he'd leave the house, all I'd want to do was go and score a bag of cocaine. So I was with him for about 6 or 7 weeks and I said, I can't do this. I said to my missus, like, every time he's fucking here, I want to go out, get a bag when he's gone. And she said to me, what? And I said, he's not helping me. I said, it's not. And that's when now I sort of believe people have to connect with
Yes,
people.
100%.
So I reached back out to Stephen again and went back down. And again, I couldn't understand why he was so forgiving and so, because I didn't understand what I know now. I was saying, why is he fucking just let me do this again? I went back down to him again and again got a good amount of clean time. And I remember Stephen saying to me at the time, he said, Keith, over the years, he said, you're probably going to go through this book another once, twice, 3 times. He said, if you aren't like me, you'll probably go through it a few times. He said, the only advice I'm going to give you, he said, when you're going through this book, he said, if it's not in the black and white of that book, don't believe it. Just walk away from it, he said, because that book was wrote in 1930s, 40s, and it's been working since then, he said. So there's a lot of people adding things into it now. And again, it was something that stuck in my mind when I then started going to CA meetings. And again, I should know, and I'm not putting anybody down because the sponsor that I got in CA was the most amazing guy for bringing people through the book. But there's a lot of things, and again, it was his sponsor showed him and their sponsor showed them, and there's a lot of things being added into the book. And one thing that I didn't agree with was texting over your sponsor inventory, right? And I remember, I'd done it for a couple of days, and I remember him contacting me and saying to me, you haven't sent me over any inventory in the last couple of days. I says, no, I won't be either. And he says to me, you want to watch yourself? And I says, no. I said, you show me in the book where it says, again, I was going back to what Stephen said. You show me in the book where it says that Bill text a sponsor, a sponsor is to text him their imagery. I said, the step says we continue to take daily imagery and when wrong, we properly admit it. That's what the step says. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm not texting you over app. But anyway, I was just, and again, I was just starting to live. When I went into CA, I sort of went in with the approach that I'm a carpenter by trade, as I said earlier on. And I went in with the approach, do you know what? To become a good carpenter, I had to surround myself with good carpenters. So when I go into CA, I'm gonna look around for people in this room that really have what I want. And I'm going to surround myself with them. And that's what I do. And that's why I class myself now as being recovered. Because when I was an apprentice, after 4 years, I became a carpenter. So when you go into recovery, you have to become recovered. And it says it in the book, we do recover. Right? Well, a lot of people still go around saying, I'm in recovery. And it's, again, that's just, again, my book that I'm writing. It's called
Stop you there, Keith.
Yeah.
It was on actually RTE. There's a guy, he's a neuroscientist. He's in recovery himself, a Dublin guy, Brian Penney. And he done an interview with Dr. Gabor Mate. I'm sure you're familiar with Gabor Mate. And he asked Gabor Mate, he said, do you think I should say I'm in recovery or I'm recovered? And Gabor Mate said to him, what do you say? And he said, well, I say I'm recovered. And he said, if I said that you were still in recovery, would it make any difference? And he said, no. And he said, so what does it matter what I think? He said, it's about what you think. You know, and it's all very clever. And I'd be very much the same. And I've had those arguments over the years with people giving out, you know, if you walked into a meeting or read out the piece from the book where I think at the start of the AA book, it says something like, we are over 100 men and women strong that have recovered. And there's some people get bent out of shape about those things. But for me, words are hugely important and they're hugely powerful. And what I speak over my life has a huge impact on me, the way I perceive and see things. I've done a great piece of work with a lady, Dr. Karen Treisman. She does a lot of childhood trauma work. And Hugh Tusla had her over a couple of years ago doing a few different things. But I'd done a course with her a couple of years ago called The Power of Language and how we speak things into our own life, but more importantly, how we speak to others. And really, really important. And I suppose the psychology behind all of that. And I've seen the difference it's made in my own life about how I speak to myself and what I speak into my own life, you know. So very, very good. Sorry for interrupting you there.
No, you're not. No, you're not right because again, it's a rarity around, as you know yourself, around the meetings, around AACA, and they sort of look like. I remember doing, like, I haven't been to a meeting in a long time now, a good few years. And one of the second last meeting I was at, I done a chair at a CA meeting. And I spoke about, so I'm involved in a lot of spiritual stuff now. I'm an energy healer and stuff like that. And again, if you've went through the book, you will understand it. And I remember going down and doing this chair and speaking about how I owed my life to CA, which I did. I done 4 years in there, and I got really, really a lot of good help and met a lot of good people that I'm still in
Mm.
contact with. But I spoke about how I owed my future to what I done now, and that was all the energy healing, the spiritual. I do a lot of meditation and stuff like that. People actually looked at me like as I was mad. And they're saying, like, what type of message are you trying to carry to people? I said, what do you mean? I said, you're telling them that you don't go to meetings. I said, but I also told them that I owed my life to CA, that I came down here and I connected with this, but I've just transitioned into the next part of my life. Because again, in the book, it says that you'll experience a life beyond your wildest
Mm.
dreams. A life beyond my wildest dreams, if that meant that I had to go to meetings every day or every couple of days for the rest of my life, to me, that wasn't a life beyond my wildest dreams. That wasn't what I was saying. That would have brought me back using it
Yeah.
personally. But anyway, fast forward a couple of weeks after that, I was asked to go down and facilitate a meditation in the same CA group.
Mm.
And I said, wow, amazing. They're going to get it now. So I went down because I had my own meditation group at this
Mm-hmm.
stage. So I went down and I facilitated meditation in this and I was just flabbergasted with the response I got, right? So the guy that was doing the chair, I can't remember who he was, but he said, thanks very much for your time for coming down to do the meditation. But to be honest with you, he says, meditation's not for me.
Mm.
And I'm sort of looking, saying, this is the bleeding chair. And then it went around the room and everybody bar two people said the same. Oh, no, not for me. And I had to stand up towards the end of it and I said, guys, I don't know who's bringing this through the book or whether you've gone through the book, but it clearly says we saw through prayer and meditation to contain our conscious contact with God. Not prayer or meditation. It's not a choice. It's prayer and meditation. And if you ask me, that's why a lot of people around the meetings are still struggling. That they're going through the steps, but they're not actually living the
Yeah.
steps.
Yeah.
And it's a key part for me. Like it's going through and actually living. Like I only said it there. I do a morning here every Tuesday called Tuesdays
Mm.
Talks, and it's around to help people around mental health and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And we laughed about right there. The first book I ever read was the AA book, and like I was 42 or something like that. And that was going down 41 or 42. When I first read it, that was the first book I ever read. And now I love reading it. On books everywhere now, where I'd be dabbling in and out of different books. Um, but again, for me, a book is not about going in and devouring the book. It's about going in and savouring the book. And sometimes I'll read a page over and over again until I really get it and understand it. And that's the way I was with the AA book. Now, I don't remember every line of it the way some people in the meetings
Yeah.
would, but I remember the important stuff and I live by it.
Yeah. That's a very important piece. So you said something there a few minutes ago about surrounding yourself with like-minded people, carpenters, for example, want to be the master
Yeah.
craftsman, hang around with them. And so that's what I do today. And I have a lot of friends in America. And COVID taught me one thing, that technology works. So I ended up jumping on a few different Zooms and made some really great friends. And, there's a particular men's group that I attend called the Stepping Stones. And the recovery or sobriety or whatever you want to call it within the room some days equates to over 1,000 years. So it's not advertised, this group. I was invited into it, thankfully. Again, one of those, I'd call it a God instance or a coincidence, but bumped into an American tourist through a friend, and one thing led to another, and I ended up attending this men's meeting, which I'm still in today. These guys, they've 20, 30, 40, 50 years, one or two of them, in sobriety. Not big book gurus, but know the book inside out. But the other thing that I love about attending that group is that there's nothing in life they haven't experienced. Some of them have went through cancer, some of them have lost their wife or their son or their daughter or different things. And what that teaches me is that there's nothing that life can throw at me that can't be managed somehow, because they've done it. I have living experiences in front of me to be able to show me that, But the way they can pull the book apart, they treat it almost like somebody might quote you a line of scripture out of the Bible. They can quote the piece of the book to me and then break it down into realistic everyday life terms. So that's what the chapter in that book says. But this is really what it means. This is how you walk this day to day. This is how you live that out. That's what it's like in reality. They bring it to life for me. And so it's something I really, really love. And people to say to me like that, why do you go to those meetings? Why do you, because I want to be around like-minded people. I want to be around people that have been there before me. I'm not going to drop any names, but I've met some famous people. I've met some people that are phenomenally successful in life that nobody from what you'd see on the telly or social media or anything like that would know of what their background is or what their life experiences is. But they come on and they share honestly and openly. And I suppose impart some of that wisdom onto myself. I love that. I love being around people that have been around the block, and that have a real story. That to me is tangible. It's something that I can deal with. And yeah, I can't say I read the big book an awful lot, but I frequently get sent bits where I'll go and just like that, I'll read a chapter, sit there, and I mean to me that's nearly meditating on it. I don't need to read 10 chapters today. I just want to read that one paragraph. What does that mean? What does that look like for me in my walk, my day, my week? And how does that affect my wider circle? How does it affect my daughter, my sister, my friends, etc., etc., etc. For life? We've one life. You've one go at this. Make the best of it.
Yeah. No, yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more, like, because it's like, and I've still a lot of friends that I met in CA. Still, I've nothing against meetings. I think they're amazing. I think they're just not for me. They're just the journey I'm on at the moment. As I said, I'm more into the spiritual end of things. As I said, the centre that I have here, I was sort of, I think it's a great place for someone to come that's a couple of years around. They have a couple of years clean time under there, but they're still lost because this life beyond their wildest dreams still hasn't come to them because they're still, as the often terms you hear, white knuckling. They're clean, but they're still crazy, and that's sort of what the centre is about. It's like I suppose it's a bridge to normal living. It's getting people to connect with themselves because everything of importance is within, right? So it clearly tells us in the book that drink is not the problem. And we can sort of say, right, drink or drugs is not the problem. It's the solution to the problem. So identifying the problem and removing the problem, well, then you don't need a solution. And that's the path I
I
took.
remember being asked to go in and do a drug and alcohol awareness talk in a school many years ago. And my opening statement actually, I know a community guard, community liaison officer, and she's JLO, juvenile liaison officer, and she asked me to go and speak at this school. I'm on one side of the classroom with the school teacher, the other side of the classroom with the guard, and a room full of kids and teenagers. And I said, so I'm here to talk to you today about drug and alcohol awareness. And the first thing I would say to you is that drugs are great, because they do exactly what they say on the tin. Drugs are not the problem. You are. We're the problem. The drugs do exactly what they're supposed to do, and they are the escape route. And something you said there really resonated with me because I'm part of a mental health support group in the background, and I suppose in my own work I meet many walks of life, and I meet lots of people with life controlling issues, is what I'm going to say. And they'll say, oh, well, I can't identify with you because I've never taken a drink or a drug. My go to answer is always, it isn't about the drink or the drug. So if it's not the drink and the drug, what is it that you're escaping into? And in today's day, is it doom scrolling? Is it social media? Is it binge watching shy TV? Is it eating 4 packets of biscuits? Is it, and generally you'll find there's an escape there, whatever that looks like, whatever it means to that person. Is it overeating? Is it undereating? Is it sex? Is it drugs? Is it rock and roll? Is it gambling? What's your thing that has led you to the point that you now admitted that you have a life controlling issue? There's something stopping me from having a full, free, reasonably happy, content life. So as you said there, it's not about the drink or the drugs. And I really kind of wanted to make a point of that today, because anybody that's watching this might start listening to it and go, well, I never took a drug, so there's no point in me listening to the rest of this. It's not about that at all. That was the escape. That's what helped take us away from what was going on in the head. And for many people, it looks like many different things where it's really the same, only different, isn't it?
Like I try to simplify even addiction now with clients, and I'd say to them, like, for me, addiction is a form of depression. It's not liking the way you feel. You take a substance, all of a sudden you like the way you feel. And that could be, as you said, it could be doom scrolling, it could be watching a lot of Netflix programs, it could be wherever it is. But that makes you feel good. That gives you that little fix. So it's just identifying why you don't feel good. Why is it I don't feel good? What is the underlying? Like, I was lucky enough. I had two fairly traumatic things that I knew. Now there was a lot of other minuscule things that I had to work on. So again, people watching this might say, well, I wasn't sexually abused or I wasn't abused in school, so maybe that's not my problem. Trauma to a child could be anything.
110%, Keith. So I wrote a book last year. Well, I started writing it in 2019 and finished it last year and got it published, called Shadows of the Past. And it's about epigenetics and intergenerational trauma going right back through Irish history for an Irish person. And recently just published a Shadow Workbook, which is a kind of a follow-on which to accompany the book, but it's about the self. So inner child work and the younger child piece. And I remember working in a treatment centre many years ago, kind of on the start of my turnaround, and I went back up to the treatment centre I went through and became a volunteer there, and then eventually worked my way up to being one of the staff. And I remember a client coming in one day and he was sharing a bit about his story, and he'd came from a very, very dark place and got himself into a lot of sticky situations in addiction and stuff like that. But part of his story, the main piece of his story, was his parents split up. He'd come from a good area, good home. And he's telling me this story. And he said, my parents split up when I was 6 or 7 years of age. And it was a bit of a nasty breakup, but, still had access to the mum and the dad and stuff like that. And, no addiction issues in the background with the parents or anything like that. And he finished the story. And I went back to him, just as he finished. And I said, and what else? And he said, well, what do you mean, what else? And I said, well, your parents split up, then what happened? And he said, well, there wasn't anything else happened. And I kind of, in my head, that wasn't enough. I was like, yeah, no, but there had to have been more to the story. And he went, no, like, that just really affected me in such a way that I couldn't cope with it, as a kid. And I just carried that then into my teens, and that was the start. And I kind of thought, is that it? And he was like, and I really had to go and check myself on that one. And it took me a little while to have a good think about it. And then I realised for him, that was his thing. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't have to be a big or something much bigger than that. That was enough,
Again, I had a young lad in here yesterday, and his dad reached out to me, a couple of addiction issues, and he was in and he was saying that he was trying CA, but he couldn't relate to it. And again, we all know what it's like. You go in there and you listen to the differences, but you don't listen to
the real message.
What you can relate to. Right? And I was like that when I first went in. Like, I've never been in a treatment centre. So I remember going into CA first and heard this fellow was in a treatment centre. This fellow was in a treatment centre 3 times. This fellow was locked up. This fellow was on heroin. This fellow was smoking crack. This fellow was doing that. And we're sitting there and saying, we actually don't even need to be here.
Yeah.
I could actually go up and live here. Like, and I remember, again, I think it was Stephen actually saying to me, and he says, start listening to the other stuff. Start listening to what you can relate to, rather than listening to all the differences. And when I start doing that, things start making sense. And I start, oh yeah, I can relate to that. Like, yeah, no, that makes sense. That fucking twitching the court and looking out the window thinking everybody's coming after you. Or that fucking sneaky behaviour that you're... I remember one of my sort of... And again, it's great now that myself and my missus can laugh about stuff. So, like, I remember one night, I used to always go on as I was this big fanatic Liverpool supporter. And the truth is, I don't think I've watched the full match since I've given up drinking and fucking drugging, right? But I remember this night in the house, and I remember fucking the phone on the blade and on the couch and saying, God's sake, and fucking... She says, what's going on? I said, Liverpool, big important match and they're losing it. She says, why don't you watch it? And I said, that's on one of them foreign stations. It was all just to get out, right? And she says to me, well, why don't you get down and watch it? And I said, do you mind? So I fly down and watch it. I didn't go home till 6 o'clock that morning, the next morning. I was sitting in the pub on my own. That's how important the match was. There was nobody out watching it. There was me and the barman. And sitting there, then I went off somewhere else. And again, I was just escapism all the time. just looking to get away from myself. And I wasn't from her because we're still together today, thank God. And I used to laugh in the meeting saying it was like we met again when I got clean and she didn't have to change anything. I had to change fucking
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny. Yeah, when you turn your life around and you go back to the people that were there in the background witnessing it.
Yeah.
Um, my brother-in-law unfortunately reminds me of the morning of my father's funeral, and we'd obviously waked my father in the house, and they were taking him out to bring him to the church and whatever. And my brother-in-law knocked at the door, and I let him in, and I said to him, I said, "You're not going like that, are you?" About what he was wearing, but he had a suit with him, to go into the house to change into the suit or whatever. And he said, "You want to see in the state of you." He said, "You were stoned out of your head." He said, "You could hardly open your eyes." He said, "You were nearly drooling when you opened the door." And he said, "You had the audacity to turn around to me." He said, "No matter what I would have worn to that funeral," he said, "I would have been in a better looking state than you, you know. And I was like, "Oh, fuck yeah, you're right. But look, it's one of them. But that's the hard truth. Sometimes we need to hear that stuff as well, to remind us of where we
100%.
came from.
Again, it's a realization that I've come to in the last couple of years is that like I look back on all of my past now as a blessing because it's all led me to where I am. Like, how could I sit and help someone that's battling addiction if I didn't go through it? How could I sit and help a client that it has revealed to me that they're being sexually abused if I haven't went through it? How could I talk to people about business if I didn't fail in business? Like, I've had many failed businesses. I've had a lot of trauma. I've had a lot of stuff going on in my life, but it gives me the ability to help so many more, a wider audience of people. And that's what I love about today. As I said there a while ago, like I'll dedicate the rest of my life to helping as many people as possible. That's what my life is now.
The
And
giving
it's
back
just an amazing
piece,
place to be.
certainly for me, obviously I'm running my own business and you need to make money to pay the bills, but the most satisfying work I do is voluntary work. I love giving back. I love that piece of just being able to support somebody else, just to be able to give them hope, instill something in them, letting people know there is a way out, that there's a different way of doing things, and
Yeah.
giving them, I suppose, the options to be able to do that. And I suppose that kind of nicely moves us on. So tell us a little bit about before, and literally just before, the Howellness Centre and the mindset stuff. Where were you at, and what drove you to do that? And bring us right up into kind of where you're sitting with all of that stuff today, because I know I've been following you on social medias and looking at your videos, and I've also had some people come back to me and give me feedback on the place. They've been raving about it, and it's lovely to hear different people coming with different perspective of stuff. So some people were telling me they love going and jumping in the plunge tank and into the saunas, and that's the bit they love. Other people, that are doing different stuff. I saw on some of your videos and stuff like that, you've oxygen chambers and do sound baths and meditation. So there's an array of loads of different stuff, which is fantastic. But before you got to actually open the place, where were you at, and I suppose what did it take to get you to where you are with it
Yeah.
today?
So again, we'll go back to where this journey started. So obviously, as I said, get into CA, look for people that have what you want or people that want the same as what you want. And we connected with a couple of lads that we just hit it off. We were going for coffees, we were going for fuel, we started sea swimming and so on. On September 2020, we went to Donabate, myself and two lads. This tide was out, sea was rough. We'd often say it was like the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan. That's what the sea looked like. But of course, like three little boys, we ran out and met the sea and jumped in. And we were having great crack in there. After about half an hour or so, one of the lads, Philly, said to me, he said, "Is it my imagination or does that tide look like it's coming in?" So we said, "It is. We might as well go back into the beach, swim back into the shore." So remember, the water was only probably up to just under our chest. And I remember going to swim back into the beach and you couldn't swim in it. The sea was that bad. It was like being in a washing machine. I remember saying, "Do you know what, it'd be easier to walk back in." And I went to stand up and it was like someone just pulled the floor from underneath us. We were being taken out. And I wouldn't be the strongest of swimmers. And I started fighting for my life. And Phil's looking at me and he's shouting at me saying, "We're fucking drowning here." We couldn't see the other guy, James. And I remember fighting for what was probably only a minute, but what seemed like fucking 10 minutes. and just exhausting every bit of energy that was in my body, and just putting my head back and saying, this is it, I'm not getting out of here. And just coming to the realisation that I wasn't going to make it out. I put my head and just went. And obviously the two lads that were with me managed to get to me and saved me out of water. I was taken into Belmont Hospital, where I kept reliving the trauma over and over again of fighting for my life. Get out of hospital, same thing at home, couldn't sleep. And I was at the meeting this guy a couple of weeks before, down to a pain in the a shoulder pain I had, frozen shoulder. He was a pranic healer, right, which is an energy healing. Something stuck with me about what he said, was about that he worked on the emotional body. So I remember reaching out to him and saying to him, listen, I was in a swimming accident there the weekend. I can't sleep. I keep reliving the trauma over and over. Can you help me? And he said, yeah, come up to me this evening. So I went up to him. He explained to me, guided me through what he was going to do, done a session which was probably half an hour, 40 minutes. He says to me, go in and have a look at that now. And when I say I could still today I can see the whole, I could play the movie in my head, but I've no emotional connection to it whatsoever. So he was after removing the trauma related to the event. He was after removing it from the body. And I was just blown away by this. I said, wow, this is unbelievable. So I ended up going and started to study pranic healing. So I was on a level, I actually cancelled the holiday to Tenerife and went on a level one pranic healing course the following week. And what had happened then was something come up, it stored something. We often hear people saying they bury their emotions. So again, a lot of the trauma that I had suffered from childhood, when he was in pulling out the trauma, some of that attached and came to the surface. So I started reliving some of that trauma, but not understanding what it was. Again, went back up to this guy and I said to him, listen, I'm at a hitting a wall. I don't know what's going on, but I'm not drinking, I'm not drugging, I'm fucking living life is good, but I still feel shit. So he looked at me and he says to me, did that traumatic happen to you as a child? And I burst into tears and I said to him, yeah. I said, I was sexually abused as a child. And he says, okay. Started explaining to me that's attaching. But he said, the good thing is I can get it out. And I said, what? He said, it's going to take a few more sessions, he said, because it's childhood stuff. He said, you've buried it for a long time. So I went on a journey with him of going up to him a couple of times a week at the start, down to once a week and wherever, until I was free as a bird. And going back to what we spoke about earlier on, is drink or drugs was never the problem. It was the solution to the problem. I had now got the problem removed. So then there was no, I can now, hand on my heart, I know 110% I'll never drink or use drugs again, because I don't have, that issue's gone. And that just blew me away, which I went on, like just actually throwing it around, like I went on and I've just done, it's the certificates there. I went on and on and on and on. I just got such a passion for this. Again, I suppose we have to experience something ourselves in order to want to do it. And when I experienced, that gave me so much freedom that I told my mother and father what had happened, which they never knew. I went down to the local guard station and reported the man that sexually abused me. I went and I started clearing all this stuff. That's now, I just wanted to give back as much as I could. Getting back to your question about Howellness, how did this start? So when I had done all the courses, I was doing a couple of one-to-one healings, and I was doing them in my office in the flooring business. And I said, this doesn't look great. I'm bringing clients in that are coming, I'm walking them through a flooring showroom, and then I bring them upstairs into an office. I said, let's look. So I started looking around Clondalk and looking for just to rent a therapy room. I just couldn't find anything. It was all monthly rents where they were charging a couple of €100 a month or 500 or 600 quid a month. I'm saying it doesn't justify doing that. So I started seeing a gap in the market, and I was in a position to invest in something. So I said, you know what, why not get somewhere and create a space? And if I can create a space so we have therapy rooms here that we rent out to other practitioners. We have a yoga studio. We have 2 hyperbaric oxygen chambers. We have the pranic healing that I actually went and studied. We have a pranic healing centre upstairs. So we have a lot of stuff. So it started off with I said, let's create a space. If I can create a space, that means that technically I can help more people, because there's more practitioners in here to help more people. And that's where the Wellness Centre started from. And and it's, as I said, I love it. There's sometimes I'm here and I don't even want to go home. It's that type of energy in the place that you just feel that you
My
belong here.
father always told me this at a very young age, and it took years for it to kick in and really for me to make sense of it. But he always said to me, son, go and find a job that you love and you'll never work another day in your life. That didn't mean anything to me at the time. I thought it was some sort of a sick riddle or something, you know. And he owned a garage. His business was classic and vintage cars, and his whole life was classic and vintage cars. He was part of all the clubs and all that kind of stuff. It was all his pals, and it was a lifestyle as much as it was a business to him. And I suppose when I turned things around, that's really what happened to me. And I worked in many different services over the years and kind of climbed my way up through the ranks, thinking, oh, if I can get to run this centre, I'll have more of an impact on more people. But what I found is, I found myself more and more getting caught up with paperwork, stuck in an office, and not doing what I really love to do, which was connect with people and to be able to see people turn their lives around, which is the powerful piece. A question I want to ask you, Keith, and I suppose I see lots and lots of people all the time. You touched on it a little bit about, in early recovery, if that's what you want to call it, going into a meeting, for example, and loads of people in the room, loads of people saying they want to turn their lives around, and then it's like 1, 2, 3, nothing, and they don't get it. What do you think that is? What do you think it is that needs to change there? What do you think the first steps might be? So I suppose if you have a young lad coming in to see yourself and he says he wants it, or the piece that always kind of I pay more attention to is if a parent reaches out to me and says, I have a son there, will you go and talk to him? And the first question I ask myself is, does the son want it or does the parent want it for the son? But what's your thoughts on that?
So it's crazy that you asked that question today, because yesterday I had a parent that reached out to me the weekend. And they obviously, oh, come here, we all love our kids, we all want the best for them. He's seeing his son going down the wrong road and he wants to help him. And I said to him, quite openly and straight, I said to him on the phone on Saturday, I said, unless your son wants it, I can't help him. I said, but what I am willing to do is I am willing to sit down and have a conversation with your son and see if your son wants it. I said, if he wants it, I said, I'll help him. But if he doesn't, I said, there's nothing I can do. I can't help you. So he brought the son in yesterday, and I've been normally fairly sharp at getting someone, this young lad, it took me about an hour and 20 minutes to break him down. Because it was just until I identified what it was like, and he was just, and we can all relate to this, he was just selfish to the core, right? It was just all about him. And eventually I said to him, and he was going to CA with the dad, and again, he wasn't relating to things. Like what I said, my story, and and again, I use my story with all my clients. I said, listen, I was that person that sat there, didn't relate to this, didn't relate to this, didn't relate to that. So I started talking to him a bit about chronic healing towards it, and I brought him in, I said, let's try something. So I done a little 15-minute de-stress and healing on him. And I said to him, how does that make you feel? Look, and not everybody feels something from it, but this young lad did. He said, I felt movement there. I said, but how do you feel? And he said, I feel a lot quieter. And I said, so do you think this is something that we could work with? And he says, yeah, most definitely. So again, we're going to, because as I explained to everybody, we're all wired differently, right? Or should I say, we're all wired the same, but we think differently. Yeah. And again, there's another theory I have, that something I'm working on at the minute. But this young lad, now I'm hoping he's due in with me again tomorrow. We'll do a session and see how he is. But again, not everybody is hardcore addicts like what some people, it doesn't take to go through the steps that we've went through. Some people, it takes a bit more. Some people, it takes a bit less. Some people just start out using cocaine because their friends were using it. They're not, and then they just like it. And then they're chasing the dragon. They're chasing that happy feeling all the time. They're not everybody that uses cocaine is an addict. That's basically where I'm trying to say. I knew I had addiction issues, because when I started, I could not fucking stop. Talk about being unmanageable. My life was completely unmanageable. Whereas this young lad, I think he's revival. But again, getting back to your question, I think the realms, for me personally, I think the realms need to change a little bit. Right? I think there's an awful lot of younger people, which is amazing, that are going into the realms. But I think we need to probably tweak them up for the younger generation.
It's good that you brought
up
the realms again, Keith. I remember turning to somebody a number of years ago and saying, I'm not going to another one of them meetings, because when I go in, it's full of people talking shite, right? That's exactly what I said to him. And there was one particular guy, he used to annoy the life out of me. And every day I'd go in, or every time I'd go to the meeting, he'd tell me, or tell everybody how many laps of the pool he'd done this morning. Went to the pool this morning and I done 50 laps, and I'd be like, oh, fuck's sake, I could listen to this again, and this is not what I came here for. And I think it was actually Stephen that said it to me. And he said, what did you say? What did you bring to the meeting? And I said, well, I didn't really say anything. And he said, but you're as an equal to everybody else in that room. And it's also part of your responsibility for you to bring something there. So if they're all talking shite and you have clearly all the answers in your head, and you know the way it should be, and you know what it should be like. What did you bring? And it
Yeah.
stopped me in my tracks, and I thought, yeah, actually, you're dead right. You know, it's my responsibility for me to show up and bring my part to the meeting. It's not about the fella that annoys me that does 50 laps of the pool and whether he's talking shite or not. That's what works for him. It's about what's my part in this and what do I give to it. It's not about take, 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 because
Yeah.
that's your very egotistical, self-driven piece. What is it that I can give to this? So if I'm as clever as I think I am, and they're all gobshites, well then it's my responsibility to impart some of my wisdom into the
Yeah.
room. But it was a great thing that was put to me, and I suppose that's the piece I love. Again, being surrounded by people that have done this before I have, in that they'll give me them nuggets of wisdom that make me stop and think in those perspectives, that I can stop looking with my
Yeah.
straightforward thinking and look at it from the side view, to be able to look at it, okay, well, actually, yeah, I've something to bring here. I've something to give, you know?
So I had a client in here, like, again, a number of weeks ago, and he sat in the chair that I'm sitting in now, and it was everybody's, like, it was, I heard about his mother. If his mother didn't do this, or if his mother would have had done this, if his father would have done that, if his wife would have done this, if his fella that worked for him would have done this, that, and the other, everything would be great. And I remember looking at him and saying, I don't think I can help you. And he says to me, what? I said, I think the best thing for you to do is walk at your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your wife, bring all them in, and I'll do a group healing on all them.
Yeah.
And he says to me, was they're clearly the problem.
Yeah.
And he sort of looked at me and said, okay, I see where you're going with this. But again, because we've all been there, like, it's very easy to blame other people. Owning the stuff is a little bit more difficult. And it's something that I do now. And it's, again, I'm working on loads of things at the moment. And one of them is a 7-hour method, it's called. And the very first one is responsibility. We have to own the responsibility, be responsible for what it is. Because no matter what's going on in your life, you're responsible for something that's brought you to where you are. Like, so it's owning that stuff, owning your part in it. And it's something that we all sort of neglect to look at. It's easier to look out than there is in.
100%. Yeah, it's that piece of having to own your own stuff. So whether I was responsible for some of the stuff that that I suppose traumatized me, and the hurt and the pain and all the stuff that was inflicted upon me. How I deal with it is my responsibility. Now I can continue to carry that for the rest of my life and let it bog me down and hold me back, or I can use it as some sort of a superpower in order to drive me forward. Um, that number one, I've come through, but number two, I'm now going to use that as some sort of an encouragement, whether it's to help other people come through it or to stop it from happening to somebody else or whatever that might be. But and again, it's the mindset, Keith.
Yeah.
It's the mindset, that you know how we use it, how yeah, using it.
The answers are all locked within.
Yes,
We need to start looking within. And that's something that I encourage in the centre all the time, is that, like, I have on my business cards, this place is the gym for a stronger mind. It's about, like, physical fitness is amazing. It's great, but mental fitness needs to be on par with physical fitness,
no,
because it's like, I could have a Ferrari sitting outside, or I could have one of your dad's old classic cars sitting outside, and whatever one has the better internal, as in the engine, it's going to be the one that's going to
yeah,
go. It's not like,
yeah.
it's not about, we all work on the external stuff, on how we look and how others look in to perceive us, but if we're not, it's all inside. It's an inside job.
Unknowns to my father, he gave me one of the best analogies of self through the way I grew up, in that I remember all clapped out rust bucket bangers coming in that you thought are only fit for the scrapyard, and within a couple of months of hard work and perseverance, and plenty of polish, they'd come out like they were brand new again. That
Yeah.
restoration piece,
Yeah.
restored. Hugely important. I love it as an analogy that, we can cut. I remember doing the work in the garage, cutting old floors out, cutting chassis out, uh, you know, restoring an engine, pulling it apart, getting a reboard, doing all the bits, skimming the heads on them, putting new bits and bobs onto them, and turning them around and bringing them back out into the showroom a couple of months later, like they just rolled off the floor in the factory 30, 40 years previously. So that restoration piece, and it showed me that if you have the determination, the grit, the drive, be prepared to cut bits out, be prepared to go through some hard times. And as hard as they were in reflection, they weren't as hard as the shite I put myself through when I was trying to destroy my own life on a mission of self-sabotage. Two things before we wrap this up. If you met the younger version of yourself today, if you were able to teleport back 20 years, what message would you have to your younger self? And I suppose anybody that's tuned into this today that may be struggling, what message would you have for them today?
It's, I suppose, and like what I said there a few minutes ago, it's looking at the inner stuff. Like, we've a physical body. We wash it, we dress it, we feed it, we exercise it. What are we doing with the emotional body? We need to start connecting within to just deal with that stuff. Meditation has become a big part of my life, massive part of my life. I'd often say, joking to people, I'd rather walk out of the house with no trousers on than walk out without a meditation, because I know walking out with a meditation, I can take on the day. Again, I would say to myself, before I leave the house, do something uncomfortable before you to start your day. And what I mean by that, when starting out, which is the cold shower. So it's quite uncomfortable. It's very easy to stand under a hot shower in the morning. Stand under a cold shower and get uncomfortable. And I think it gives you that resilience throughout the day to know that, well, I've done something uncomfortable and it wasn't that bad. I came through it. So whatever happens throughout my day, I can come through it. So it's everything. I think we're all in the place where we're meant to be. And I think it's trusting the process that this is a journey we're on. It's not a destination. And just try and guide yourself on that journey the best you can and be a good person. Like, it's not rocket science. It's a simple thing. I say, I start off the morning with a cold shower, and it's getting that sort of resilience, because it's sort of setting yourself up for the day. That's saying, well, listen, I've done something uncomfortable. I've came through it. So whatever comes up throughout the day, because come here, it's life on life's terms. People are going to piss you off. That's what people do, right? People are going to cut you off in traffic. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. It's going to happen, but it's how you deal with it. So if you can just start being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and just connecting within.
Yeah, very good, very good. Keith, tell us a little bit about where we can find you, what exactly you do down. I know you've touched on loads of bits, but just as we wrap up, just for anybody that's tuned in and watching this, where can we find you? What's on offer? Will you give us a discount on a bit of floor and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, people say to me, it's two totally different businesses. Well, I said, well, it's not really, because anybody buying a house, it's a very, very stressful thing to do. We've already identified that you can get into addiction and all that type of stuff from stress and depression. So if you're going in and you're buying a house, first of all, we're going to help you floor it. We're going to remove all that stress, because we're going to guide you into the right floor to choose, and we're going to do all that stress-free flooring for you. And then if you're stressed out after the whole process of purchasing the house, we can get you up to the centre here. We've meditation groups, sound baths, Pilates. There's different workshops on here. We've 2 hyperbaric oxygen chambers. They're amazing for anybody that's for reducing inflammation, anybody with sports injuries, or anybody that's coming in for surgery. So many benefits.
Huge list. Sorry for cutting you off. My sister had a stroke. Very good for that. There's a multitude.
Amazing.
I've done a bit of research on the oxygen chambers, and the benefits of them is absolutely massive. And the list of stuff that they can help is phenomenal. Sorry, keep going. I was enjoying that.
So we've the two of those, and then we have the recovery room. And again, it's a recovery room with a difference, right? It's not. I want to say, with a difference is, if you want to get down and sort of challenge your mates, and it's all about loud and who can sit in the plunge pool for the longest and all that, there's loads of them types of places. Our recovery room is a little bit more zen. There's nice sort of spa type music, meditation music in the background. You come and you just chill out. That's what it's about. I'll explain to people for the first time doing it what's actually happening in the body. It's not about enduring yourself to sit in a ice cold water for 10 minutes. That's not what it's about. It's about getting circulation going. And then we have the therapy rooms then, where we do sort of one-to-one healings and stuff like that. So we've a lot going on at the centre. And again, as I said, it's the gym for a stronger mind. I encourage, we're trying to reach out to a lot of men, because men need to start looking at this a bit more. Like, you really do. Sometimes it could go weeks on end that I'd be the only man in this place. where like there'll be classes of women and women and women. We've an event on this Sunday with Kenneth Egan.
Oh yeah.
Again, has been on his own journey of addiction and stuff. So we're doing an event here this Sunday called Activation to Relaxation, and it's just for men only. So we're going to do an hour of intense boxing drills with Kenny. Then we'll go for an hour into the recovery room, the sauna plunge pills, and then back out for a sound bath for the last hour.
Right. Really,
So
really good.
again, I think there's still 2 spots available on that. So, but this probably won't go out before then anyway. But we're going to be doing that probably once a month as well, to try and connect, just to, I suppose, get more men in.
Very, very good. And where can we find all this stuff?
So we have on obviously Instagram, all the socials. We have Howellness, and we also have the website howellness.ie, and we have our own app, Howellness
Very
app,
good.
for booking
Yeah.
stuff. And then uniqueflooring.ie. We've a showroom down on the Nace Road, Unique Flooring. Probably be moving sometime this year, but all the updates again will be on Instagram, Facebook, and all the socials.
So you're on all the social medias platforms. You have the websites there. I will get you to send me them on. We'll put them in the link below, so they can find them as well. Keith, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed today, and you know, I suppose I did say to you before we started this, you know, the Really Heal podcast is for, I suppose, 2 different or slightly different approaches. I'm looking for people who are have true lived experience, but who have radically transformed their lives, and you've definitely done that, and you're an inspiration to many. And yeah, I love the wellness center and stuff like that as well. So yeah, we'll look forward to seeing the continuation of the journey and what's next for you. You have your book that's going to be coming out soon. Have we a title of the book?
Yeah, We Do Recover.
We Do Recover. Lovely. So we can keep an eye out for that sometime in the next couple of months as well. Listen,
100%.
absolute inspiration. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to today's Really Heal podcast. If something in the conversation landed with you, don't just sit on it, because awareness on its own doesn't change anything. Action does. And if nobody told you today, Richard the Mouse Williams loves you, and we'll see you in the next episode.